Hi there, this is Solitaire Ronan from Solitaire Ronan Films, and welcome to another episode of Filmstock. Today's subject is tropes or cliches I can do without, and again this is an interactive series, so I would quite like to see some of your choices for film cliches or tropes that you could do without. Again, I try not to be too negative in this channel. You know, there's enough negativity in the world. But I thought this would just be a fun subject, because it's not just all negative, it's kind of what we could maybe do to improve it as well. And it's not just a dig at modern films, because some of these tropes have been around for a while. It's mainly things that are pretty much based on insulting the audience or being lazy, things like that kind of thing. But again, I'd like to see your lists. This series is just me generally rambling nonsensically for most of the video. Yes, you could argue that's what I do normally anyway. But we'll start with one which is more of a modern thing as films have progressed, but I say modern, it's probably, you know, from the 70s on, and that's needing to see characters actually die on screen, and if they don't die on screen, then 99.99% of the time they're going to come back later in the film. In the olden days, because our attitudes to violence was different, we didn't need to see bullets going into people. We didn't need to see blood and gore. You know, I like blood and gore just like everybody else. But sometimes when characters would go into a room, you'd see a close-up of a gun, you would just hear a gunshot. You know, your imagination can kind of fill in the blanks. But like a lot of these tropes, it's almost like we don't have an imagination to use. And also it has become a trope of, if you don't actually see a character die, they're going to come back. But again, that always wasn't the case. And again, with the Hays Code in Hollywood and stuff like that, we didn't have to see people draw their last breath. We didn't have to see people getting killed. We could just hear about people have been killed, and there wasn't this desperate rush to go, aha, but they'll come back. Whereas now, like I say, it's probably 99% of the time that if you see somebody die, if you don't see somebody die, they're going to come back, and as an audience we're supposed to be surprised or amazed when they turn up in the final reel. But that stopped being a surprise quite a long time ago. Not to bring up The Thing again, as if I'm obsessed, but look at Knowles. We just assume Knowles is dead. We don't see Knowles dying. We see Gary getting his face rubberized, but we don't hear from Knowles. Knowles never comes back. It's just Childs and McCready at the end. We just know that Knowles didn't make it. But even in 1982, I'm not sure why, but Carpenter decided we don't actually need to see Knowles die. So that's like number one. You know, let's go back to people just dying off camera and just not coming back. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't need a surprise that's not really a surprise when they come back in the final reel. The second one is just a personal thing. It's not a huge issue I have with cinema, but it's something that's always annoyed me, is things working on the third attempt. So people need to get the car to start, danger is coming closer and closer to them, they try starting the car, the first attempt doesn't work, people get closer and closer, the zombies or whatever, you try it the second attempt, close up of the lock, it doesn't work, they're getting closer and closer, and then just as people are getting in the car starts on the third attempt. It doesn't have to be a car starting, it can be a key in a lock, it can be a button, it can be the dynamite not working. I mean, I know the phrase is third time lucky, but why can't it be the 24th time lucky? I think we should, you know, have a Bresson or doing an action film and having it work on the 26th attempt. Yes, but again, audiences won't sit for it if you're trying to go through keys to get into a lock and you take it to the 18th attempt. Strangely enough, the studio is not going to sit for that, and they're going to go, it has to work in the third attempt because third time lucky. But if you've ever had an issue with your car in real life, and I realise films aren't real life, I think, or your keys jamming, or there's a problem with your PC and you can't get it to start, very rarely, if something's broken, it's not going to start on the third attempt. If you have a problem with your lawnmower, it generally doesn't start on the third attempt. Again, this isn't a huge problem or a huge issue, but it's always, and I get why things work on the third attempt, but why not the fifth attempt? The next one is from the thumbnail of this video, which is an image of Mr. T from the A-Team. This is a trope that I thought was relatively new as far as perhaps the last 30 years. But I can't remember the film, but I'm sure I saw a film from the 70s and it had this trope in it. And this trope is quite amusing the first few times you see it, but now it feels like it's in every single film and it just annoys the hell out of me. And that's, well, from the A-Team, it's like, I ain't getting on no plane. At least in the A-Team they punch him out so he gets on the plane. But the number of films that have I'm not doing that and then cut to them doing it. You know, I'm not getting in that car, cut to them getting in the car. I'm not going in there, cut to them, they're in there. It's just like, again, it was amusing the first few times you saw it, but now it's literally in every second film where a character says, I'm not doing that, there's no way I'm doing that, I'm never doing that, and then cut to them doing it and sitting there with a blank expression in their face, and it's supposed to be hilarious. Again, there was a film from the 70s, it might have even been the 60s that I saw that had this in it, and I was actually quite surprised because I thought it was a relatively new thing as far as like the last 30 years. But then obviously as you get older, you know, the year 2000 doesn't seem that long ago, and it's 20 years. 1990 doesn't seem that long ago. So this trope has actually been around for longer than certainly I thought, but it's time to put it to bed. If you're expecting a big laugh from it still after all these years, I think you maybe need to think of something else to amuse the audience with, because it's just like so tired and cliched now. I think we can put that one to bed. Another one is more horror based, but I suppose it does come back to a little bit about the first one, and that's the villain or the monster being dead. Oh no, they're not. Obviously there's a kind of history in horror for this, especially post-Halloween. Obviously you get the classic Carpenter shot of Jamie Lee Curtis in the foreground and then Michael Myers sits up in the background, which again worked at the time, was shocking at the time, but again now it's expected. If you watch a slasher film or a horror film or a monster movie film now and they kill the villain or kill the beast, you know for a fact that 93% of the time they're still going to come back regardless of what happens. And again, I get it adds more drama, it gives you that, you know, the audience has taken its breath. Oh, the evil or the monster is finished with, we can relax. But then you actually realise there's still 10 minutes to go. Granted, nowadays that can be 10 minutes of credits with the inevitable Easter egg at the end. That's not on the list, but that's kind of annoying as well now. But it just got into the habit of, oh, we need one last jump scare, we need the villain or the creature to come back one last time. It's like, if you've done it well enough up to that point, you don't need to come back again. It just gets a little bit redundant. Well, for me anyway. But again, that's probably been going on longer than I want to recognise, but it's still kind of annoying. Another one that's annoying and really speaks to the dumbing down of the audience, and perhaps people have got stupider, including using the word stupider, but it's the graphics that come up telling us which city we're in, usually coupled with a very famous landmark. So even if you have no geography knowledge whatsoever, if you've got a shot of the Eiffel Tower, you're probably going to know that's supposed to be Paris. But then they come up with Paris, and it drives me mad, or madder than I usually am. It's so lazy. Again, how many times have you seen Big Ben and London? You know, the Houses of Parliament and London comes up. Obviously can't do that with Twin Towers in New York anymore. But it's just like so lazy. And it's not even they just put up the landmark, they have to put up the landmark and the name of the place. And this kind of goes with the second part of this, is if they are in Japan or China or somewhere in the Middle East, they also have to put up the stereotypical music. They have to put up the kind of cliched, recorded in a library of Japanese traditional music or Chinese traditional music or Middle Eastern stuff, just so the audience knows where they are and what they're familiar with. Again, in the 1920s or the 1930s, that's fair enough because lots of people haven't travelled. The idea of somebody travelling halfway around the world to another holiday destination, or if you're not actually going to war, you're not really going to travel halfway around the world to another country, so you might not be familiar with landmarks in the Middle East or traditional music in the Middle East. But it just has become, probably since the 50s and 60s, it's just this stereotypical cliched trope of, oh, we're in the Middle East, let's put on that Middle Eastern type music. Or the one that annoys me the most is Japan. As soon as you bring up Tokyo, they have to have that stock library music that we all know. Again, it's just lazy. And for the people that defend it and say, oh well, not everybody knows, and it's like, really? So next is another graphic thing, and it's something that, you know, good filmmakers can use other means of showing it, and that's the blank card with 2 years later, 10 months later, 14 weeks later, 10 years later. You can show the passing of time in different ways. I mean, you can even show the way they did in the 30s and 40s of a calendar and pages of the calendar coming off if you want. But again, it's just this slap up a graphic with 10 months later, 2 weeks later. Also, the ones that have like clocks and put times up, you know, like 4:52 a.m. Does that really matter? And again, it's just, there's other ways to do it, but it's obviously just cheaper and lazier just to put up 6 months, 2 days, 12 hours later. Again, these are just like pet peeves. These aren't game-changing tropes, but it's just little things that we can do without, I think. Certainly I can do without. The next, which is similar to the cities thing, is how many films begin with a helicopter shot of a city, usually at night. I mean, I would actually like to see the stat. It must be at least 60%, if not higher. Probably higher in American films, of just that helicopter tracking shot of a city at night, and then the credits come up. It's like so generic. Why do we need to do that? Usually sometimes with a card saying which city it is and stereotypical music telling you which city it is. It's really tired, and surely there's better ways of opening films than just the bog standard cityscape, usually at night. Next is pointless voiceovers, but not specifically pointless voiceovers that save the writer or the director actually doing work on character. So if you have a character just endlessly explaining everything in a voiceover, it actually saves the writer and director figuring out how we're going to get these ideas and thoughts across without doing voiceovers. I mean, Casino is a great example. Casino has voiceovers from about 4 different people for like the first hour and a bit of the film. It's just sledgehammered over your head. You could argue, well, Scorsese used voiceover in Age of Innocence, but that voiceover works. It's a voiceover that's giving you background, it's giving you exposition on where you are, because it is essentially a foreign time in a foreign land. It's not giving you character, okay, it gives you slight character thoughts and feelings, but it's not bludgeoned you over the head. I just feel Scorsese went way too far with Casino. And it's more that kind of voiceover. I'm not adverse to voiceover, but it's pointless voiceover that just saves the writer or director having to figure out how to get this character, or how to get the audience into the character's head, how to show what the character's feeling without actually having to write and have acting. Again, this is just the theme of the video. It's more about things that make the filmmakers a bit lazy. Yes, sometimes it can be budget restrictions, sometimes it can be just easier for them, but art shouldn't be easy. It should be a struggle. So just saying, oh yeah, we'll just do voiceover for the first hour and explain everything to everybody. Obviously it's not a separate issue, but characters who just give exposition is another trope that we just need to get rid of, but again, that just comes out of poor filmmaking, really. You know, you'll just have a character and all they do is just expound exposition. Strangely enough, that's what exposition's there for. One of the examples is John Goodman in Kong Skull Island, which I like a lot. But all John Goodman's character does is just spout exposition. At no point does he give an opinion on what's happening or give his feelings on what's happening. He is literally just an exposition machine. And again, this isn't just an attack on American Hollywood cinema. It kind of happens a lot. It's just pervasive in most film types. Just this, let's have a character explain everything that's going on, all the background, but have no actual human behaviours apart from just spouting exposition. Because who in real life, I know films aren't real life, honest, keep telling yourself that, who in your real life do you know who just spouts exposition all day long? Nobody. It's just a lazy way of explaining what's going on without just leaving it to the characters and just writing the characters, and through their behaviour we understand what's going on. But that's another just minor annoyance. Another one is showing the protagonist being successful at whatever they do. This is usual action cinema, really. And then of course the rest of the film is the challenge. The rest of the film is like the main story. It's like, just cut that. It's like also films, again mostly action or horror, that have like a pre-credit sequence of, which is essentially just a repeat, or not a repeat, but a preview of what's going to happen for the rest of the film. So you'll have other characters in an origin story, or if it's people on a mission film, you'll show the first 10 minutes of what happened to the previous mission, or what, and it's just like, that doesn't matter. Dropping people in to the story, dropping the audience into the story, dropping the characters into the story is far more interesting than having this pre-credit or the first 10 minutes of the film showing you what's about to happen just with different people. Again, as an audience, most of the time you don't really want to be ahead of the characters and know more than the characters. You should just be dropped into it and find out stuff as the characters find out stuff. But again, studios sometimes just say, no, we've got to have this to explain what's going on or what will happen for the rest of the film. We have to have this or the audience will be confused because they'll have to figure things out. And that's really annoying. And the last one I'm going to talk about, and again, if you think I'm talking nonsense, then please let me know in the comments. I want to see your list of tropes that just annoy you and things that we don't really need anymore in films. And the last one is using animals, mostly dogs, sometimes cats, but mostly dogs, as emotional bait. And again, this has been going on for a while. It's bizarre when you think of how many films in your collections you have where a dog is killed, or a dog is threatened, or you think a dog's dead. And I just feel this is because some filmmakers can't write human characters well, or can't write human characters that we actually care about. They'll just put a dog in because they know the audience, well, unless you're a psychopath, most audience members will go, as long as the dog doesn't die, so, and they play with that. They put the dog under threat. They'll make it look as though the dog's died, and then of course they come back in the final reel. It's kind of reverse villain stuff. Obviously there are films where dogs do die, cats do die, do die day. And then as soon as a character kills a dog, you can then as a filmmaker do anything you like with that character and you won't take it too far. Killing children is one thing, but you kill a dog, you're literally, it is evidence for psychopathic behaviour if you kill animals. For your own pleasure. But I just think it's overused, and I feel it's kind of a shortcut to actually writing human characters that you care about. So if you can't do that, let's just throw a dog or a cat in and put them under threat, and then the audience will actually be engaged with our film, which normally we don't actually care about the characters. And again, this isn't a new thing, so I'm not just attacking modern films. It has been going on for years. But just write better human characters that you actually care about, rather than using specifically dogs and cats. More so dogs, probably. Just as emotional bait for the audience, because you can't think of anything else to get the audience engaged with you. So that's just a random list, because this Filmstock series is just a random rambling session, basically, of tropes that we could probably do without. But please leave your unwanted tropes at the door of the comment section. I'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say, or if I'm talking complete nonsense, which wouldn't be a surprise. So thanks very much for watching episode 2 of Filmstock, and hopefully you'll join me someday for episode 3 of Filmstock. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying farewell.